Thank you. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about celebrating with a purpose, infusing Black history and culture into your holiday celebrations. And I'd like to say that this is an unusual presentation for us. Normally we're in academic mode or clinical mode, and we're providing you with research that serves as a foundation for our recommendations. If, for you as a parent, as a clinician, a student, or an educator. And although we do have evidence-based research to share with you today, today is more of a fun-filled day. So we're infusing celebration into our very serious professional development. And we hope to have a little bit of a show and tell with you of what we have to offer. And we hope that you've brought some things with you as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. West. Let's see. Well, before I do that, let me first ask, as people are coming in, if you could in the chat, just give a shout out as to where you're coming in from. So we want to know where are you guys hailing from? Where are you right now, or where are you actually from? Either way. So if you could just type those into the chat, we'd like to just do a shout out to you from wherever you're logging in from. So we definitely want to do that. And then as you're doing that, we're going to introduce our guests today, as well as our staff. So I'll turn it over to Dr. West.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have you all here for our final webinar of this year. I'm very pleased to introduce our special guest, Mr. James West Jr., who is an organist and a pianist. He has served as a minister of music for over 35 years, starting back in 1985. Prior to that, Mr. West was a secular musician known as Magic Fingers while performing with soul music bands in the 60s and 70s. He has written several songs and currently serves as a minister of music at a church in Florida. While his roots are a mixture of blues, R&B, and gospel music, he really loves what's called smooth or cool jazz. And you may notice some elements from all of these genres in his unique musical style. And I've included a link here if you're interested in obtaining any of his music. Some of that music is available online on Amazon.
Awesome. And if we're lucky, maybe we can get that link put in the chat. So you can just go ahead. Awesome, thank you. So we're not going to read our bios. Many of you have been following us in our previous webinars and events. Again, I'm Dr. Cirecie West-Olatunji, and with me we have Dr. Constance West, and we are the co-founders of Crest Achieve. And also,
we have 3 staff members. Our longtime staff member is Ms. Ashley Petian, who is a graduate assistant for the program. You can read her bio, but bottom line is Ashley has been working with us doing lots of different things, everything from helping us to develop promotional materials, coordinating webinars and chats, including this one. She will jump in on the Q&A section and add comments as she feels the need. She's been conducting interviews with scholars, which are available on our website, our program website. She manages our subscriber lists. She has been designing and disseminating the newsletter, as I said, and she has been engaged in research. Janae Bond is our graphic designer, and she is a senior, soon to graduate, I believe this semester. She has a great deal of passion, a lot of creativity, and she started her own business, so she's an entrepreneur. And you can learn more about her either on our website or here. And the newest member of our team is Taya Dickerson, who was also a senior at Xavier University in New Orleans. And she's serving as our social media intern, which was the position that Janae Bond was previously in. And she has a lot of creativity, has been a whole lot of work related to social media, and increasing our following there.
So what are the updates? What's been going on? So many of you, again, if you're on our mailing list, you notice this is our 1-year anniversary. So we are very excited, what we know about business and the longevity of businesses. If you can make it past the first year, you're in good stead. So we are in good company. We've made it past that first year anniversary. We're really excited about that. If you're not on our mailing list, you probably didn't get the newsletter. So please subscribe so that you can get it. We have a quarterly newsletter called Uplift, and we put out the anniversary edition where we take a look back at the year and what we've done during that time. Again, those of you who follow us, you've been on our website and you know we have resources. We have concept papers. We commission scholars to write in various areas to talk about issues related to Black youth and academic achievement. Our latest is Dr. Jimmy Caldwell, who has a very thought-provoking paper that you will want to read. He's also been interviewed. Ashley interviewed him. It's an exciting video. And it's also up on our YouTube channel, but you can access it either through YouTube, through the website, either way. Also, we have more trainings that are available. You can access them through the website, but they're up on our training site. And so you can go there and check out all the trainings that are available to you. And of course, anytime we have a free webinar, we upload it to our YouTube channel. So you can go there. The most recent was Unseen and Unheard, the rising suicide rates among Black children. Very popular. A lot of people really enjoyed that. As I recall, it was a 90-minute webinar, and we had to actually ask people to, we'll have to shut this down. We're tired, and we want to move on. But people wanted questions answered. That was it. And of course, our very first training, Culture Centered Mondays, is a 4-part training. Excuse me. And it's still available to you. So those are the updates. So we've created a calendar for you if you're thinking about what's up next. What are we going to be sharing with you? We have an Ask Me Anything in January, and it's going to be a live Facebook event. So you can just click on the link. You can go to our Facebook page and you can just RSVP to let us know you're coming. And it's just going to be a very loose, informal opportunity for people to ask questions about culture-centered trauma-informed care. And really this question of what's culture got to do with it? So why is it that the overwhelming majority of the trauma-informed care programs nationally don't include culture, don't address culture, don't address race-based trauma, and so on? And so we wanted to really focus on that. In February, we'll have an event, a Zoom event, moving from transgenerational trauma to transgenerational resilience, helping Black children deal with historical racism, a panel discussion in March, dispelling the myth of the sassy Black girl, promoting healthy identity development among Black schoolgirls. In April, 5 Afrocentric parenting skills that correlate to high academic achievement for Black youth. And then in May, addressing the mental health needs of Black mothers. So it's going to be a fun-filled winter and spring. We look forward to seeing you at any or all of these events. And so we'll move on to the learning objectives.
Okay, we have 3 learning objectives as indicated here. So first, we would like for you as participants to increase your knowledge about how you can use holiday celebrations to promote positive racial or cultural identity. And what we know from the research is that by doing this, you increase Black children's propensity for success, academic success, and emotional well-being. The second learning objective is for participants to augment their awareness of bias and the availability of Afrocentric decorations, toys, and holiday activities across the various purchasing outlets. The third official learning objective is for you all to expand your understanding of the benefits of using culture-centered interventions with Black children and adolescents. And a fourth sort of implicit learning objective is for us all to have fun while learning some new strategies that can help uplift Black children and adolescents.
Absolutely, I agree. So what are we going to talk about? Racial identity, academic achievement, and emotional well-being in Black children. Of course, this is something we talk about a lot. And then we'll move right into some of these issues of how do we celebrate and how do we promote wellness and achievement. So we're going to talk about Black people and celebrations. What does that have to do with well-being? Holiday decorations. What does that have to do with well-being? Holiday gifts, holiday activities. And then we've got a poll for you. We want to know what you guys are thinking. And during the poll, Mr. West will give us another musical selection. And then what we'll do is stop recording and we will open it up so that you can share some of the things that you use when you are actually working with youth or with your own children. So we definitely want to do that. Let's see. And then we'll have a Q&A and talk about the January event. And that will be it. So let's move on. So when we think about Black children and achievement and their emotional well-being, we think about just this core element, and that is our understanding that racial cultural identity development promotes these 5 major things: racial socialization. So we have shared expectations, a legacy of success. So they begin to understand that their success is part of a lineage of success. So it's part of understanding what's happened before them, who has come before them, how have people been resilient and successful and high achieving in the past, and also thinking about the future of how do they contribute to other people coming after them, younger people, next generation. So how are they part of that? How are they a link in a chain in thinking about that? Also, it really fosters critical thinking in several ways. So definitely when we think about the use of proverbs, the idea that children are encouraged to really understand the meaning of proverbs in order for them to understand context, in order for them to create linkages to information, to integrate what they've learned before to new information, and for them to think critically about the environment that they're in, to not just accept things as they are, but to ask questions. And critical thinking also leads to innovation. So that also helps them in being productive. The fourth one is coping and resilience against traumatic stress. And you've heard us talk a lot about this issue of traumatic stress. And so we need to be very aware of what interventions are most effective in addressing traumatic stress for Black youth. And so we know that racial cultural identity development is a mediator for that. And what we want to do in whatever role we're in is to help them to be resilient against the multiple negative forces that are operating against them. And then finally, it helps in fostering positive relationships, not only familial relationships, but also relationships with their peers. And it helps with conflict resolution. And so I know in working with youth, one of the things that I've done is be able to develop culture-centered or Afrocentric conflict resolution programs for programs. And and agencies, and it's been very, very helpful to them in being able to do that. So we do want to think about that and really concentrate on this idea of racial cultural identity development as being a linchpin in terms of helping Black youth in their emotional well-being and also in their academic achievement. So when we think about celebrations, right? And we think about why is it important for us to have these rituals? And that's really what celebrations are. They're rituals. And so we've provided you with some citations of research that focuses on that to understand why is this so important to youth and to youth of color in particular. So we know that cultural and ethnic celebrations have been shown to be correlative to psychological well-being within the context of community engagement. So basically the idea that getting out and being with people who are in your network and celebrating, engaging in things, maybe having to emphasize the successes of current individuals, or to be able to talk about elders, to talk about ancestors, helps youth to be engaged, to be involved in their community. And it contributes to how they feel about themselves. So their subjective self-esteem is raised as a result of these rituals or celebrations in their communities. We also know that celebrations have been associated with trauma recovery, trauma-based recovery and resilience. And again, when we think about race-based stress, about race-based trauma, one of the things that can be very helpful is organizing community events so that youth can come together and recognize that they're not the only one who's experiencing the distress as a result of living and breathing in the US, but also they can share stories of coping, of how they've been able to resolve situations. They can take a look at and understand things in a historical context. Whenever I talk about traumatic stress, I like to talk about traumatic resilience, about recovery and resilience, because we know that in order for Black people to still be here, we know that people were very successful in coping with the most horrific kinds of domestic terrorism. Third, when we think about musical celebrations and group music making, such as brass bands, for example. So I live in New Orleans, and brass bands are definitely a central part of the community here, of the history of jazz and so on. And so it's important to understand that there are quite a few positive outcomes of being a part of group music making. This also includes vocal, like being in choral groups as well, singing in the choir and so on. So we know that it helps with, as a stress reliever. It also helps with determination, persistence. And so we would encourage people, as you're working with Black youth, to involve them in group music making, music celebrations, anything involving collaborative music activities.
As Dr. West-Olatunji was saying, is that it's really important to be able to actively counteract the impact that society has on the potentially negative impact that society has on Black adolescents and youth. So for example, a study that was conducted by Martins and Harrison in 2011 indicated that or revealed that television exposure was predictive of decreases in self-esteem for both Black boys and girls. So independent of gender, it had a negative impact on the self-esteem of Black children, and also girls, independent of race. However, high levels of television exposure were associated with increases in self-esteem for white pre-adolescent boys. And this could be partially explained by a lot of different issues. So number one, it had to do with the depiction of white males versus these other groups. So oftentimes, on television, the main character is typically oftentimes a white male, even now, maybe affluent, maybe virtuous, seen as powerful, or heroes or superheroes. And for others to be depicted as poor or sidekicks or criminals, violent, dangerous, immoral, powerless, and dependent on things like public welfare. So there's an overrepresentation of negative images when there are Black or brown characters, and even women to some extent. And more generally, Black children and adolescents experience incidents of racism on a regular basis and internalized racism, discrimination, and colorism within a wide variety of settings. So typically what we talk about with CREST Achieve is we talk about 3 particular settings. Talk about the home setting, talk about the school setting, and clinical settings. And the purpose of this particular webinar is to show you specifically how to apply this information. So what do we know from the literature about the impact that racism, discrimination, colorism have on Black children and adolescents and their academic performance and their sense of well-being, and to actively counteract those effects by tweaking how we celebrate the holidays. It doesn't have to be anything major, it doesn't have to be very preachy. Some of these things are sort of passive approaches that are highly effective. So what we're doing is showing you ways, or what we'll be showing you ways in which you can substitute some of these negative images of Black people, Black children, Black adolescents in general, with more positive images of people and other beings, whether they be real or imaginary, that resemble them, who are beautiful, important, powerful, protective, benevolent, and trustworthy. And at the bottom of this screen, of this slide, is something that might be a little controversial, what I deem to be the big 3. So the big 3 are Santa Claus, Jesus, and God. And we can add in Mary, angels, and elves, and things of that nature. So for children, one of the big things they're thinking about is all year long, they're supposed to behave so that Santa Claus will determine or deem them to be worthy of receiving presents. And then the number, whether they receive presents, the number of presents, which presents they receive, is determined by Santa Claus. And for children who are Black and brown, they believe that this individual is white, an older white male, which they may also have been taught that typically people depict Jesus and God as older white men, that can have an impact on how they see themselves in relationship to those individuals who are white, those individuals who are older and white, or those individuals who are older white and male. So we want to substitute some of these images to empower Black and brown children, even during the holidays, or especially during the holidays.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, Dr. West, if you'd like to give the example that you gave to me when we were preparing this information for our participants. You gave an example, I think, of a client you had and her perspective on whether or not you could be an angel or...
Oh, yeah. There was a little girl about, I would say, as I recall it, I think she was about 6 or 7 years old. And we were, interacting with each other, and we were sort of doing this play activity, and, of her choosing. So she decided to do, it was around Christmas. She decided that we were going to enact a scene in which she was in heaven already. And I had recently died and I was trying to get into heaven. And, so I agreed to that, and I started talking to her, and I was using Ebonics. So I said things like, "Oh, I sure am glad to be up in here." And, I'm so glad I did all the right things in my life. And I know I'm fin to get up in here or whatever. And she was like, "Oh, no, you cannot get into heaven talking like that. In order to get into heaven, you have to talk like this." And she started to go ahead and use standard American English, pronouncing all of her T's and her R's. And I was like, what? And my initial reaction on the inside I was extremely offended. I was extremely offended, not by her, but by whoever had been teaching her this, that you have to be as close to, I guess, stereotypically white behavior in order to get into heaven, that I wouldn't be accepted into heaven unless I changed the way in which I spoke and acted in my mannerisms. She didn't like any of that. She let me know. It was very clear there was no way I was getting into heaven. And we had a little bit of an issue because it was just the two of us, and she did want to play. It was very important to her for us to enact this whole scene. But I let her know, if I can go in as my whole self, using every part of my culture, the way I talk, the way I express myself, my body language, my head movements, whatever, those were not welcome into heaven. I didn't want to go. And so we had a little standoff. And eventually she agreed to get into heaven so that we could continue the scene. But it was like, okay, we have to undo this, because of the idea is that we have to be as close to white in terms of how we look and talk and speak and view the world in order to be acceptable in heaven, to be accepted by God, to be redeemed, or then that is a serious issue. Like, we need to undo that immediately. And so we started to work on that and unpack that so that she could embrace all of her Blackness, all of her cultural values, and still feel like, yeah, you take that with you. Like, that's how you were designed, and you were perfectly that way. God knew that when he designed you, and that he expects you to be who you are as you walk in there. We may have to make some changes when we apply for jobs or when we present ourselves in certain ways. We need to do some of that switching, but not for God.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that story. It really struck me, and I thought it was very illustrative of why we need to do this work. It reminded me of Toni Morrison's The Bluest
The
Eye.
bluest eye.
That has always stuck with me in terms of why we need to work with our youth, so that when they look in the mirror, what they see is someone who has potential, someone who has worth, someone who has value. And so I was really glad to hear about the experience you had and how you responded to it. Now let's move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so continue.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue talking to you about holiday decorations. So now that we've sort of made the case that it's important to sort of weave this whole issue of racial identity development and cultural identity development into the holiday celebrations to obtain the outcomes in terms of self-esteem, emotional well-being, academic achievement that we are trying to achieve with these children, how do we go about doing that? So a lot of times it's like, okay, I got the information, I understand the research, but how do I apply it? What does that look like is oftentimes what people ask. Well, here's some examples. It's not exhaustive. This is just some examples. Holiday clip art. I will tell you that the thing that took me probably the longest in putting together the slides that I was assigned for this particular webinar was finding holiday clip art. And I'll be honest with you, it was a major ordeal. And I honestly was offended by the process. Oftentimes when I tried to do searches, I did searches African Christmas, African American Christmas, Black children, Black family Christmas, holidays. And it was like a few, just a handful, sometimes the same child over and over again. When there was a child, that child tended to be very, very fair skinned, which is fine. We need to, have the full spectrum of hues, not just one or the other. Yeah, and definitely not doing things like, not Black children being depicted as doing things like throwing snowballs and building a snowman. There might be, at one point I saw like 557 different images available for free, and so few, not even the 13-14% that you would expect based upon the percentage of African Americans in America. Wasn't even close to that. Sometimes it was just a handful. And sometimes the children look sad, angry, threatening, as opposed to just plain out happy. Or you had to purchase them. So there were a million, or not, there were hundreds that were available that depicted white children celebrating the holidays with their family members or just enjoying, I don't know, snowball fights or whatever, but very few. And then even a smaller number that you could purchase. And so it became this whole issue of why are we not being included and why are we not being represented consistent with our the percentage of African Americans in America. Black Santas are hard to come by, and elves, whether it be live, so you're taking your children to sit on Santa's lap, whether we're talking about in movies, on TV shows, in books, ornaments, and figurines. It's increasing, it's getting better, but still relatively infrequent. Black nativity scenes, I've seen a few. Black holiday figurines, definitely some. Ornaments, wreaths, we're coming along. Well, ornaments were coming along. I haven't seen too many wreaths that have maybe, I don't know, kente cloth or anything that would reflect anything about African American culture or African culture. Tree toppers, I've been looking for a long time. What I found is that if they're, well, very rarely are they in the marketplace, I mean, in terms of in stores that I've seen. And when they are, they're just a white angel, female always, painted brown, usually tan. Okay, not my color, definitely not chocolate. And definitely not without thick hair or braids or anything that would make it really clear that she's African American. She's typically a Caucasian design that's just painted. And Kwanzaa items, hard to find, sometimes kind of expensive compared to other things because they're relatively infrequently available in the marketplace. You have to go to a specialty store. It doesn't say you can't find it. You just have to go to a specialty store. It's not going to be typically at Walmart, Target, Ross, TJ Maxx, that type of place. Let's see, some resources. There is a Find Black Santa app available. I did download that if you're looking for that, where they actually help you find, where can I find a Black Santa? Free black clip art, nappy.co is awesome. Pixabay.com is very good. There are some limitations. So for example, nappy.co is exclusively images of Black and brown people. Amazingly, they didn't have any images of Kwanzaa and just about, I want to say less than 10 images of Christmas. That was odd. And Pixabay, I think, had about 7, and 3 of them were the same basic design, just in different colors. So it was like, okay, what's going on here? Even in this day and age, 2021, it seems to me that there's still more work to be done. And I have to be honest with you, a lot of times when I did the search, what came up was very disturbing to me. It was like, what? That is your idea of what we do or how we look, or, yeah, very disturbing. Offensive even, to be honest with you. But it was worth, hanging in there and being creative and finding different, sites and finding some of these royalty-free images. So they're out there. You just have to work hard to find them.
Very nice. So when we take a look at gifts, and thinking about gifts, it's really not about the product, about the tangible gift giving, going out, rushing around the mall and trying to find gifts and trying not to be embarrassed about the size of the gift, the quality of the gift, the cost of the gift, and so on. But rather the idea of gift giving as intangible and tangible. And we know from research that gift giving has healing properties. So one is, we're back to this issue of group identity. It's so important. So gift giving really is a ritual. So that means that it's part of shared expectations. So and again, I'm not talking about the product, meaning this material thing that you're giving someone, but about the nature of it, the context for it, how is it done? So some people exchange gifts on Christmas Eve, and they have family over, they have a meal, and they do that. Some people celebrate and exchange gifts in, a as a faith-based activity where there's a service, a religious service, and that's where family members want to exchange their gifts. I know in my family, when my children were young, that we used to occasionally have the children to not buy any gifts. So we had a whole exchange of Christmas gifts, and none of them were purchased. So we all had to make things instead to really slow down that consumerism that can just overrun the holiday period. And certainly, I'm going to talk about Kwanzaa later, but certainly in thinking about Kwanzaa, Kwanzaa is not a holiday where you go out and buy the items. So it's really disturbing to see now that Kwanzaa is something that's celebrated, that it seems to be this encroaching commercialization of Kwanzaa. And that is the very opposite of what Kwanzaa was designed to do. The second point about gifts and gift giving is that it rekindles well-being and reciprocity. So the idea that we are in community, I do something for you as I know that you do something for me, in the sense that I am because we are. So I belong to the collective and the collective takes care of me. And so the idea of gift giving is part of this feeling that we have as a sense of community. It also promotes a subjective sense of well-being. So I feel good about myself because I am giving back to my community, that I'm doing something for my neighbor. I'm doing something for younger children in my family, in the community. I'm making something for my parents, and so on. And then finally, it connects individuals to their communities and it fosters involvement. So again, like rituals, celebrations, the idea of gift giving can also emphasize and punctuate our cultural values.
Okay. Well, my job is to talk to you about holiday activities, and there's so many of them, especially if you think about across the whole African diaspora. So I'm going to quickly go through this because I definitely want to get to our, we want to make sure that we get to our show and tell portion and the Q&A. And I see people already have some questions. So let me just make it through this list. And there are a couple of things that are not even on here that I can add. So Dr. West-Olatunji just talked about gift making, really important activity. Of course, shopping for presents is also an activity for many people. For some people, performing community service, especially as it relates to their religious activities, but sometimes not related at all, just as an outside volunteer activity. People use that during the holidays. A lot of times when I know I've worked with organizations and we wanted to make donations during the holidays, a lot of times they would say, oh, we are at our capacity. We don't need any more, children's items. We don't need any more toys. We don't need any more toiletries, etc. They're like, can you just wait until February or so? Because we sometimes get swamped. That doesn't say that you shouldn't try to make those donations, but keep in mind that this time of year is a time when people start to think about, well, what can I do to help people who maybe cannot afford presents or don't have a home or don't have the basic necessities of life. So performing community service is definitely a holiday activity that many people engage in. Cleaning and organizing home and workspaces. A lot of people are like, I am not going to start this new year with a whole bunch of clutter in my life, whether it be physical clutter, emotional clutter. People start saying, you know what, I'm going lean and mean for the new year. I'm not taking in any excess baggage, foolishness. And people start to do that with the understanding that number one, it's a good idea. Number two, you want to have a new beginning. Also, some people think that it's good luck to start the new year in that way, or bad luck to take the negative or extra baggage into the new year. Of course, hosting and attending dinners, parties, and celebrations, even if they're virtual because of COVID. I just had an amazing virtual event with my girlfriends. This is our second one in a row. I thought I would not like it. Loved it. So we're all sort of making this adjustment to these virtual get-togethers. Of course, attending or watching religious services, very important for those people who are, religious and want to do that for their spiritual connection. Other people do that outside of the religious realm. Watching holiday movies. I am a person who's into classics, but there's a whole bunch of holiday movies, especially Black holiday movies, that are coming out. They're coming out in the United States, they're coming out all over the world. In Nigeria, it seems like there's a new movie all the time, especially on Netflix. So there's a whole lot of options out there. Definitely a whole lot more than when many of us who are baby boomers or older were growing up. We had very few. And now that I look back on, especially those black and white movies, there were so many things you had to just totally tune out in order to enjoy the movie, either subtle or really overt racism. You're like, let me just forget that part and focus in on this other issue. Let's see. Oh, giving and mailing greeting cards and using holiday stamps. That's one of my favorite things to do. And it's a really sort of subtle thing. You just stick that stamp on there and it may say something about Kwanzaa, or it may be an image of a little Black child just playing in the snow. Every now and then, I think I have some that are related to Black heritage. Talks about the Emancipation Proclamation. The only people who get that one. Oh, and the one that's Marvin Gaye. Those are the only ones who get that. People I truly like. Aunts, uncles, great aunts. People who have been really important in my life. So in a way, you can tell by the stamp your status, because the ones that are hard to come by are the ones that really say a lot about us as a people culturally, and especially when they run out and you can't get them at the post office anymore. I think I have one Emancipation Proclamation stamp and just one of the old versions of the Kwanzaa stamps. But that's just a way to say, okay, my greeting card reflects culture, African-American culture, African culture, and everything down to the stamp. Playing cards. We'll come back to that. So they're playing games. So it could be cards, board games, Pekino. I know there was a question about Kwanzaa, so you may not know, for those people who don't know about Kwanzaa, you may not know about Pekino, which is sort of like a bingo game that a lot of times, I don't know how often people do that now with the younger generation, but I know that it's definitely a part of a lot of African Americans celebrations or family get-togethers. Reading books with and or without holiday themes is also a holiday activity. Cooking, the kitchen is the center of holiday events mostly, and making holiday beverages. Clearly for children, it's going to be non-alcoholic. For plenty of adults, it's non-alcoholic. But for those adults who can handle their liquor, adding a little bit to these holiday beverages, everything from regular eggnog to things like sorrel, which I will talk about in a little bit. And of course, listening to and enjoying and making music. Dr. West-Olatunji talked about singing, but also and dancing, as well as storytelling, especially as we get elders involved to talk to us about what the holidays were like, either when they were growing up, when we're talking about whatever region that they're from, if it's from what it was like in the South or in the country, or for people who are immigrants, what was it like back home? Whether we're talking about Trinidad or we're talking about Nigeria or Ghana, just understanding like what are our traditional holiday activities and how many of those things are we aware of, can we appreciate, how many of those things we want to bring forward and continue throughout the generations.
Very nice.
In terms of food and drink, these are just a few. Remember, we're talking about the whole African diaspora. So food and drink. Of course, as people, we all share certain things that we eat in general during the holidays. But there are certain things that are a little bit more frequently or associated with the holidays. Dishes like jollof rice in West Africa, especially Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, and the Gambia. Sorrel, which I actually have right here. If you're unfamiliar with sorrel, it is delicious. If you like ginger, if you like a sweet drink, this is non-alcoholic, really amazing. I know that when I visited Jamaica, it was all over the place, and it was all about who makes the best sorrel, goes well with spicy dishes and things like that. Black cake. For those of you who are familiar with it, you know, a really good recipe for black cake takes a whole year. You start soaking the fruit a year in advance. Some people start immediately. After Christmas, they start soaking the fruit. So if you think that you're gonna, because I think someone asked you to make a black cake and it was like I guess a month before Christmas, and I was reading the recipes. I'm like, oh, I was supposed to start a year ago before I even knew you. That's not gonna work. And so I was trying to, fast forward the process. But so these are some things, and a lot of times in the Caribbean, that this is a major dish that's considered. Sweet potatoes and all sorts of versions in the U.S. And outside the U.S. too, whether it be roasted sweet potatoes, candy yams, and sweet potato pie, not pumpkin pie, although some people were into that. A lot of times you can offend somebody by saying, oh, this is a really good pumpkin pie, and it's sweet potato pie. You might get kicked out. Well, maybe not, but culturally, that is definitely a thing to consider. For New Year celebrations in the US, what are we talking about? Dishes like black-eyed peas or hop and jive, collard greens, it's supposed to be associated with luck, like money, cash, dollars, cornbread to go with that, and old-fashioned. It says chitterlings, but it's chitlins. That's always. I remember as a kid when I started reading, I was like, wait a minute, it's chitterlings? Nobody's been saying. I was so upset. It's like, I had no idea. Like, nobody told me it was chitterlings, but chitlins, not so much anymore, but there's some people who are sort of old school who still do that. Want to bring in the new year with some chitlins. And freedom soup from Haiti. So these are that's also a dish that is associated with celebrating New Year's in Haiti.
Very nice.
Holiday.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Holiday music. Now, this was a hard one. What I did was I looked at a whole bunch of different sites in which they listed the most popular, the best, the so-called blackest Christmas music. And I think we could probably get into a big debate, but these are some of the songs from This Christmas, Someday at Christmas by Stevie Wonder. I always have Donny Hathaway in there with This Christmas. We got Santa Claus Goes Straight to the Ghetto by James Brown. Every Year, Every Christmas by Luther Vandross. Nat King Cole, I think my mother would lose it if I tried to bring in Christmas without the Christmas song. Silent Night by the Temptations, I think would be the one for me. I would be like, no matter what happened to me, I would probably confess to anything just to get you to play Silent Night for me. If I were, accused of a crime, I confess even if I didn't do it, if you told me you weren't going to play it for me. And then Destiny's Child with 8 Days of Christmas is often cited as one of the best or blackest or most popular Black Christmas songs. In Jamaica, there's a song called Make the Christmas Catch You in a Good Mood. I know I cannot do a Jamaican accent by Mikey Bennett. I saw that repeatedly at the top of a list of Jamaican Christmas songs. I've provided some links here to the Jamaica Observer's listing for the 10 most popular Jamaican Christmas songs, and also the Ebony's list. There are 19 of them. Couldn't list them all. And that leads us into the next section of the webinar.
All right, so we'll bring back Mr. James West. He's gonna play for us, and I will launch a poll, actually. So I do want you guys to participate in the poll. So let me see if I can get this poll up for you. And yeah, so it's being launched now. There you go. So you should see the poll right now, asking you to choose your favorite Black Christmas song and singer. So we actually put them together. There are other people who sing these songs, but pretty much we've matched them. So let's see what you all have to say. I can see you participating now. Wow, clicking right through. Clicking right through. That was a big jump. I'll reveal after you've all clicked in. But, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm looking to see. Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. What a surprise. Okay, we got, just a few more folks. And yeah, I think you'll be surprised. Interesting. Okay, and if you don't see the poll or you're having difficulty, you can vote in the chat. So you can just type in the song in the chat if you want to. But it looks like everybody who's gonna vote has voted. So now what I'm going to do is end the poll and then share the results. So look at that. Donnie Hathaway, This Christmas. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. Oh, see, I fought to keep CeeLo Green in there, and I'm glad I did, because two of y'all went for that. So I'm glad I did. Very nice.
Good decision.
Very, very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us, because we wanted to hear what you had to say. And we are close to getting the chat. James, were you going to start playing?
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
Greetings, everyone. I'm happy to participate in this year's Infusing Black History and Culture into your holiday celebrations event. I'm going to offer my contribution with my newly written song for the occasion, Love on Each Other. The vocals are in progress, so if anybody feel inspired to reach out to me, contact me in the chat and I'll give you an email address so that, you know, if you're interested in vocalizing that song. People all over the world worship a creator God, one Father called by different names. He says, love one another and stop playing those silly games. If we don't get it together, we have no one else to blame. The magic key is love. Love, love, love. Let's get it together and he'll welcome us above. This time of the year we celebrate in many different ways. Make sure he's in it. It'll brighten up your days. Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Remember, he's the Omega and the Alpha. The magic key is love, 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 love. Let's get it together and he'll welcome us above.
you. Thank you. Love that. Exactly. Exactly. All right. So now that we've given you the background, the history, because we always like to make sure that when you are sharing this information, that you are telling people that this is based upon evidence-based research. So we've given you that. So now I'm hoping that you brought some things with you. That's why this is a meeting and it's not a webinar. So normally in the webinar, we can't see you. But this time we said, this is going to be a conversation because we want to share. We want to personify this issue of celebration of community. So we intentionally made this a meeting so that we could see you, you could participate, and you could share. So we're going to stop recording because this video will be up on YouTube up until the point of recording. So for those of you who are watching this later and you're watching the recording on YouTube, this is when we just made it private for the participants who were actually there live. So thank you so much for participating. I'm going to stop recording now.